I think nutrition feels complicated because everyone wants to be so dogmatic about it. I'm paleo, I'm keto. This isn't good for you. This isn't good for you. Well, this is good for me. Well, this tastes good and I like it. This makes me feel good. Nutrition is so individualized that I have seen people eat a carnivore diet and all their biomarkers improve. And I have seen research on people doing that, being like, I felt horrible. My cholesterol went through the roof. My energy dipped and dropped. I've talked to people who are vegan who are like, this just makes me feel good. So this is the reason I'm doing it. And I've talked to other people who are vegetarian who are like, yeah, I'm just really low on energy, struggling to get some protein in my diet. I don't feel like I eat enough. And I'm like, light bulb, like you need a steak. You need some chicken and you need a steak and you need to like feel those nutrients pump your body up. I think if we start from a place where nutrition is individualized and you need to take time to figure out what works best for you, everyone would be better off. There are a couple people I really like that I think break some of these things down. Max Lugreve is really good, I think, at providing very plain language advice without being too dogmatic. I think some people, not him, but I think some people are a little bit like they're kind of bullies about it. They almost bully you into thinking that their way is the best way. And you've seen a ton of people codify their nutrition advice into things like Weight Watchers, Whole30. I think a lot of these provide some really nice structure for people. Whether or not they work for you, the structure is what works. And so for me, when I think about it, I'm trying to build a structure of nutrition that works really well for me, that balances my goals. Currently, which I think that context is really important before I give my answer about my nutrition so that people realize why I'm doing it. I am very active, very on the go, and I eat to live. I love sitting down to a really long dinner with people, but I like it because I'm sitting down to a really long dinner with people. Outside of like sushi, I could eat the same thing every day for every meal. And I am very much, Michael Chernow is a friend. I'm very much also a creature of habit. I really like his oatmeal actually for meal one is very good. But I'm very much a creature of habit and I need repetitive structure. And the reason why I do that is because I rely on the way that food makes me feel. And it also makes me look the way I want to look. And so that's a very obvious structure that works very well for me. And I think about my nutrition in just sort of a couple of easy phases. Number one is, am I choosing high quality foods? So where can I get those high quality foods from? For most people, that's where they should start. They should sit down, they should look at their plate and go, was this the best choice available? I heard Kelly Starrett say that really early on one time. He was like, just make the best choice available. He's like, if pizza is the best choice available for your kid, you need to feed them. They need calories. If you could feed them something better, you should. It's almost negligent not to. We just have all these crazy emotional overrides with food, cultural, social pressure, whatever that might be, nostalgia, things that taste good. Like I love Wonder Bread with butter and Sprite with crackers when I don't feel good. It's like, well, that's what you were being fed when you were 6 and didn't feel great. None of which are healthy options for when you're sick or what you should be eating. So I think like first step for most people is food quality. Can I make better decisions? What's the best decision available? Doing a review of that, of your total eating, being a little bit more aware of what you're eating. Second thing is then, am I eating adequate protein? And that's the most important thing for me and something that I semi consistently track. I have a pretty good feel for how much is correct. I err on the conservative side of just a gram per pound of body weight. If I'm trying to preserve muscle and lose a little bit of fat, which happens around times where I'm starting some endurance stuff or just trying to lean out a little bit, that protein number might go up a little bit more, just like a conservative way to add calories that won't have an adverse effect, or as adverse of effect. So that's step number two. I build all of my meals around my protein source. So breakfast, I've actually been eating a lot of meal one from Michael in Creatures of Habit, combined with eggs. For lunch, I basically am just like a chicken and rice fan. That's post training. And so I'm just fueling with protein and carbohydrates 2 to 1. And I'll get to like why in a second. Um, for a snack somewhere in there, I usually just turn to a protein shake. This is my on the go flexible option that I could flex anytime throughout the day. If I happen to be out for a meal or meeting somebody for food, I won't consume that protein shake and I'll just eat another smaller meal. And then for dinner, I alternate steak and salmon for the most part. And I'll build like a little bit of salad around that. The third kind of like layer to nutrition. So first, it's just, is this the best choice available? Higher quality foods. Protein number macro comes second, making sure you hit a minimum or a floor with that. Third is the mix of carbohydrates to fat. This is where nutrition starts to become highly individualized and goal dependent. My current goal is to sustain a really high level of output. In any given week, I'm lifting 3 to 4 times, doing 2 to 3 conditioning sessions, running 2 to 3 times, rolling 2 times, boxing once, with random surf sessions thrown in there. So I'm in an active session 10 to 12 times a week. I also burn a ton of calories at rest. So my calorie consumption has to be pretty high. That's a performance goal. My aesthetic goal is also to hold on to some of the muscle that I just kind of came off a little bit more of a phase where I was just sort of doing what felt good, but really making sure my strength training was a primary goal, adding a little bit of mass. I would like to preserve that. So I also want to make sure that I'm getting enough protein to preserve that, but also enough carbohydrates to not only solve for the number of sessions I'm doing in terms of performance nutrition, but also carbohydrates in terms of starting to build and repair some of the damage I'm doing to my body to actually preserve some of the mass. And fat is a filler number based on total calories. And those two numbers fluctuate up and down, the carbohydrates and fats, just depending on what phase I'm in. I'm moving into a phase where I want enough carbohydrates to make sure I can train and sustain this level of output, but not so many that I just errantly add mass that I don't want. And then fat is a filler number. And so total calories is kind of what I'm adjusting up and down. Protein levels just never change. So if you were to do the math backwards, you'd find total calories for calories at rest plus activity level, which is an educated guess. You get total calories, you remove the protein calories, you get carbohydrates and fats. Those two levels are adjusted, goal dependent for your performance goals mixed with your aesthetic goals. And then the last piece of that is just messing with some timing. People should not go there until they have graduated from being able to assess on the fly without a ton of thought process my 1 through 4. So before you ever get to, well, is fasting good for me? Should I go keto? Do I need to eat this at this time, or is it better to eat this before or after? Yeah, there's a better choice, but the best choice is just adherence to a consistency point in which you earn the right to ask complicated questions. At the start, you don't get that right? Like you need to spend a lot of time thinking about this before you start asking the complicated questions. Let's ask the 3 good questions that will solve 95% for 95% of your answers. And so on the nutrition for that, was intermittent fasting for a really long time, and I've actually in the past couple of years really gotten off that due to the volume of exercise and especially wanting to put on a little bit of mass. It's hard to get as many calories as I need in a compressed time window. So I've extended that time window a lot. Um, and I tend to stick to like pretty consistent meals in order to answer all of those questions. So I'm happy to go into like what those foods exactly are, but I think that's a pretty good like short condensed answer to how I think about that process. And the easiest way I simplify that for myself is get a general sense of how much overall food I need to eat, make sure I'm hitting my protein levels every day, and then doing my best minute to minute to not make bad choices, to not make suboptimal food choices.